What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the OT Unleashed podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Johnson, and my special guest today, live from London, Dr. Kaitlyn Jones. What's up?
It's going good. How are you?
Good. Well, thanks for being on the show. I know we have like a ton of stuff happening right now, but I wanted to take a couple minutes just to talk to you about the conference, being in London, some of the work that you're doing at Microsoft, or what you can tell us, and just a little bit of that. So you're here in London. What conference are we at right now?
So we're at the GA Conf, or Game Accessibility Conference, here in London. It is put on twice a year, once in Europe and once over in the US, and it's essentially a 2-day conference that's dedicated to talks all about accessibility in the gaming industry and how we can come together and make gaming and hardware and experiences for players with disabilities more accessible.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool because I think one of the things that I love about this conference is it's very kind of tight-knit, right? So it's a lot of developers and game industry experts on accessibility that are together, but that's a small amount of people. We're still relatively in a kind of early stages of making accessibility really everywhere. So if you had to like kind of label a theme for this conference, what would you say some of the highlights that you saw coming out of this were?
I think the major takeaways are one, kind of leaning into the phrase "nothing about us without us." As an industry, we cannot create accessible experiences for players with disabilities. We need to create them with players with disabilities, bringing them in, having them consult on our games, be part of our teams, and making sure that we are including people with lived experiences throughout every step of the way. Otherwise, we can't truly ensure that what we're creating is going to be accessible.
Yeah.
I think the second theme is probably just how diverse our player bases are. Even among two players who both have the same diagnosis, two players who are blind, two players who have low vision, limited mobility, that sort of thing. Everybody is going to have very different experiences and very different needs. So we need to make sure that we are varying, any kind of feedback and collaboration among a lot of different people, not just one person or one person's experience or feedback, but bringing in just as many folks as we can.
I mean, that's very OT sounding because, we usually adjust treatment plans based on the person that we're working with. And you could have an amputee that has the same amputation where another one does, and it's a completely different treatment plan. And so this would be the same thing with gaming. And so one of the things, and you were kind of alluding to this, is that having a broad range of customization for your game is a big deal. And this conference does have a lot of developers, and so for the OT folks out there who do any kind of game accessibility, you're going to receive the work that they put into the game. And so you can use a lot of these tools to be able to help make a game more accessible. And so we've been talking about screen readers. What are some of the other things that we've been talking, vision type stuff, all kinds of different.
Yeah, I think this conference has had a lot of focus on visual accessibility, which has been really awesome.
Yeah.
So how players with different visual disabilities should or can leverage things like sound design and cues that aren't visual towards their gaming, but also a lot of great talks about mobility and input accessibility. But yeah, I think across the board hitting on that main topic of customization and giving players the option to really tailor their experience to their individual needs, and what supports that they need to be able to play the game is key.
And I do love that you mentioned that, nothing about us without us is a theme, and really this gives such a great platform for different people with disabilities to work in the industry, actually, if they do it right. They're able to make money, helping the developers create great products for other people with disabilities, similar disabilities. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that I would really love to see more and more is bringing people in to be able to do more of that type of stuff, So beyond this conference, so you've been at Microsoft now for what, 6-7 years, something like that?
I think around 6.
Yeah, and you have kind of worked your way up into a really cool role, and you're pretty locked into doing accessibility with them. How's that been going?
It's been awesome. So I sit on right now the gaming accessibility team at Xbox. So our team covers kind of accessibility really across all of our Xbox experiences. So I personally work a lot with our hardware teams, making sure that we're not only looking at accessible, bespoke accessible devices, things like the Xbox Adaptive Controller, but also looking at our standard controllers, our consoles, kind of everything across the board, and ensuring that those experiences and devices are as accessible as possible. But I also have a lot of other great, awesome people on my team who, work on the platform settings side, our accessibility settings across PC, console, cloud. A lot of those experiences are game titles, our internal tools that our employees are using to make sure that we can hire people with disabilities and that all of the tools that we use are accessible for them as well. So it really runs the gamut in terms of what our team covers, and it's really great.
That's cool. So it's almost like your interdisciplinary team at a hospital. You'd have your nurses and your doctors and, the administrative staff and even the custodial staff. Like you guys have not only people like you, accessibility leads, but, the developers, the hardware people, the engineers. Like it's really a team that has to make this work. And actually without them, any one member, it probably wouldn't be as successful. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that's been interesting coming from the OT space and borrowing some of those skill sets is just like you said, working with different disciplines and having to understand how to speak their language.
Yeah.
So as an OT, when you're working with your PTs, with your doctors, with your psych team, whoever it is, your nursing staff, who you're working with, you need to be on the same page and working collaboratively with them. So at the same time, if I'm working with a hardware engineer versus a software engineer versus, the localization team, the marketing team, like we have to collaborate, actively meet them where they're at, speak their language, and kind of all be on the same page to make sure that our end-to-end experiences are accessible.
So when you're done with the product, let's say that, and you don't have to spill any secrets unless you want to. I'm just kidding. But if you're, you've been working on a product, it's getting to the point where you're ready to release it to the public. Like, what does that look like? Is there a big team of people that all put their hands on it one last time, making sure that it works? Is that kind of how it looks?
Yeah, there's so many people, so many teams involved between our test validation teams that are making sure everything works the way that it's supposed to, working with our packaging teams. If it's a hardware product, is the packaging accessible for people with various disabilities? Working with our marketing teams, if we're creating a really awesome sizzle reel video about the game or about the new device or whatever it is, do we have audio descriptions? Do we have subtitles and captions? Making sure that anyone can consume that information and learn about the product in an accessible way. Working with our customer support and documentation teams. So if there are any accessibility features or things that we want the community to know about the product so they can make an informed decision before they decide to purchase or not purchase it, they have access to that information. So it really is a huge collaborative kind of end-to-end effort across hundreds and hundreds of people. So
I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm going to ask the question. What is a typical time between the product is pretty much finished and it's released kind of in its final form? Is it ever really finished till it's released, or is it kind of always being tweaked little pieces at a time until the very finish? Or do you set a deadline, it's going to be released this date, it's all got to be done by then?
I mean, I think with anything you try to set a deadline, this is what we want to bring into the world, and making sure that all of that is working the way that we want it to before we get it out in customers' hands and have people buying it. But at the same time, we always want to create longevity in our products. So, we shipped the Xbox Series XS quite a few years ago, but we're still adding new features to it, new controller mapping features, keyboard remapping on controllers. So, there is that sort of deadline where that's your experience and you're going out with it and this is what we're marketing. But at the same time, we're always getting new feedback. We're always finding new things that we can improve on. And as the audience gets broader and broader, more folks get their hands on it, we get more feedback and things that we can add to it. So we try to keep that open and keep iterating on things. So, yeah.
So first time in London, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, what have you gotten to do? What are some of your favorite things so far that you got to experience here?
I love being in Europe just in general. I love the culture and the food. All of that's just goodness. I love the architecture. Obviously, in the U.S., we were talking about this as we were adventuring and checking out Big Ben and the Tower Bridge and a lot of cool palaces and stuff like that. You know, in the U.S., it's like, that house is 200 years old and that's really old. And then, you know, you come over to Europe and it's like, that castle was built thousands of years ago.
Right.
It's just, it's kind of mind-blowing to be among these really, really amazing structures that I feel like you would take for granted elsewhere.
Yeah, it's been really neat. And it's neat to meet up with friends in a completely different world, you know, and I've really enjoyed, you know, just getting to know a lot more of the developers. So you mentioned this conference happens twice a year. One time it happens in Europe, and the other time it happens in the U.S. And a lot of OTs have asked, and I'm going to have you on this podcast for a longer period of time, but a lot of OTs have asked, like, how do I get into the biz? Like, would you recommend, like, somebody who's interested to maybe come to a conference like this? Like, hey, I want to do maybe accessibility. Would this be something you would recommend?
Yeah, I think this conference is really great for just networking, getting in the space, meeting people, just kind of getting an understanding of where the industry is at and how we can improve. But I also think there's a lot of things that OTs and other folks can do in the meantime, that you don't have to limit yourself to waiting for a conference like this.
Yeah.
I always say, you know, unfortunately, we're not quite yet at the point where a lot of tech or gaming companies are posting like OT wanted on our team.
Right.
I think we'll get there, but not quite yet.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you are wanting to get into this space, definitely looking at how you can expand your skills or build upon your OT skills towards what folks in the industry are looking for. Is it program management? Is it user research? You know, how can you kind of start learning more about some of these other spaces? This way you can not only provide that rich OT and accessibility and disability hands-on experience to helping teams create more accessible experiences, but also, you know, fulfilling the core needs of the team of what they're hiring you for, whether, again, that's program management or a lot of those things.
Yeah. Hey, Wobbly Gamer, you want to come in here real quick? I mean, it looks like you're here.
Your setup's better than mine.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Yeah. So, well, they can't see, it's okay. But actually, you know what? I'd love, here, come sit where I'm sitting. I'm going to talk, and you can talk about it. This is really exciting because this is the Wobbly Gamer. People call them Wobbles. But
it's a Wobbles better than ours.
Wobbles, yeah. So can you just real quick, this is impromptu, so real quick, so you were born with a condition that, or I guess your mom, when you were in utero, had a situation.
Yeah, so I was...
Talk to us about that.
Mum contracted something called pseudomyosis. It's an infection in the womb where it doesn't affect the person carrying.
Yeah.
It affects the baby inside the uterus.
Right.
So I was born underdeveloped. I had indents on the brain. I was born with paralysis on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And I was born totally blind.
Yeah. And you have since gained movement and motion in your
so
left.
I've got, as you can see, full motion with the left-hand side. As I got older, the vision got better. So I developed a sense of vision. Got to the age of 16, they went, the vision's as good as it's ever going to get. I went through like mainstream school. I studied hospitality at university.
Yeah.
And then hit 24 when my little man was born, and they went, it's getting worse. Your vision's going backwards rather than forwards.
Okay. So, and now you have nystagmus, and you have a kind of a rare.
I've got so nystagmus affects 1 in 1,000 people.
Right.
So every one person in 1,000 people is born with nystagmus.
Yeah.
I've got the side effect of that, which is called shaken head nystagmus.
Yeah.
So I have the form of it that causes my head to wobble uncontrollably.
Yeah. And so, why would you choose that name? Given that story,
because
it makes sense, right?
And
if people have questions, I mean, you're an open book, right? Like you're ready to talk about.
I'm a very open book. Yeah.
So there's one thing that I learned this conference that I hadn't heard before, and it was really telling to me, was when you told the story about flashbang
Yep.
in a shooter. And so I was in the Army for 20 years, and I have actually experienced flashbang grenades
Yep.
for real, and they are designed to impair you.
Yep.
To the point where you don't know where you are, you can't, your ears are ringing, you can't see. So tell some of the, so these are occupational therapy students and
Yep.
and occupational therapists. So you're gaming, and one of the things you said is that you had a similar experience, but it was in a game. Talk to us about that.
So when I get flashbanged in a game, it's very much like someone's kind of walked through my door into my office space, thrown a flashbang, and gone, there you go.
Right
So,
in front of you.
right in
And
front
you
of me.
play competitively.
I competitively is a push.
well, you play against other online players.
I am very much a multiplayer player. I spend a lot of time playing multiplayer games. I spend a lot of time in Battle Royales, are one of my favourite games. I play PUBG with my friends. I play Fortnite with my son. But there's a clip available online where I get, and these are friends of mine, and I'm very much, it's all fun and games, isn't it?
Yeah.
So someone picks me up, puts me in a room, and then throws about 8 flashbangs in the room.
and how do you play? Why is that so effective to you?
Because it's like someone has walked into my setup and thrown a flashbang in there.
Yeah.
Because I sit so close, I live in a flatback.
Yeah.
I wear flatbacks. If I'm playing a game, normally the front peak is touching the screen.
Yeah.
So when you get flashbanged in that instance, it's very much there, it's in your eyes, it's in your face.
Yeah.
So you get the light.
Yeah. And do you wear headphones when you play?
Yeah.
So you also,
You've got the noise.
you got everything.
You've got everything. And
Yeah.
I can't explain it other than being flashbanged in real life.
Yeah. Wow.
But X-Defiant, Call of Duty, in the last 12 months have added, it's called inverse flashbangs. So
Yeah.
instead of having the white screen, it goes black.
Yeah.
And for someone that plays competitive, battle royales, first-person shooters, that 5 to 10 second difference is monumental.
Yeah. Huge. Yeah.
It is huge.
Yeah. Because I mean, you're almost certainly going to be killed.
You're going to be killed,
and then
you're going to lose the
respawn.
game. Yeah.
And then you're going to be killed again. Or something.
Yeah, it's huge. It makes such a difference.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Well,
I'm curious too, because again, like Eric said, we're talking to occupational therapists and their students, and one of the things that we always talk about is meaningful occupations. Like,
Yeah.
we want to get folks back to doing what's meaningful and important to them. Like, what is gaming to you? What would it be like if you couldn't access gaming, or you just got flashbanged and you're just like, what is it like having gaming in your life or not having gaming in your life?
Gaming's everything to me. It's my social life. It's my escapism. It's all the cliches that you all talk about, but for me, it's on a whole different level because it's a level playing field. I am a specialist in FIFA, FC, whatever you say. I can play FC or FIFA, and against 90% of the people that play that game, I will beat them. And for me, that's huge.
yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, he can't see, but you know what? He can play video games just as good as the rest of us.
Yeah.
I play PUBG. PUBG is not a forgiving game.
Yeah.
It isn't.
You're out very quickly.
You're very quickly. But I can't do the combat inside 200 meters. But if you put me in a 1v1 inside 10 meters, I would back myself 75% of the time.
Yeah.
Because I know that they're close enough for me to see, they're close enough for me to engage, and I will beat someone that's got full vision
Yeah.
75% of the time.
Well, and I think that's a common misconception that we see over and over, is that people just assume that if you have some kind of deficit, disability, whatever you want to call it, that you won't be able to play competitively, or maybe you couldn't even enjoy a game because, well, they can't play. And that's not how we always approach things with like an ability focused lens, like you can do things and you have an opportunity and you want to, which is a big part of it.
To me, it's that cliche of being disabled with the can-do attitude. I've got the can-do attitude, but I've also got the ability to back it up.
Yeah, sure.
And some people say it's like really arrogance, and I'm like, yeah, you have to have that level of arrogance.
Yeah.
Inside gaming spaces, inside the Call of Duty scene, inside the CS:GO scene, everyone's got a level of arrogance of I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you know what? I can't see what you can see.
Yeah.
But in 75% of the circumstances, I'd back my own arse against your arse.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, and you know, honestly, you had to work hard to get there.
Oh,
you know, it's not like, oh, I'm just naturally a good gamer. Like you.
I am naturally a terrible gamer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for popping in. I know it was kind of impromptu, but I really appreciate it.
No.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, Kaitlyn, thank you again also for being on the podcast. You guys are awesome. And both of you, just I can't thank you enough. We're in London. We're having a good time. And hope to see maybe both of you in Seattle here in October. So so that's it from the OT Unleashed podcast. Thank you guys so much for being on. And, have a wonderful, wonderful day. And we'll see you later.
Thank you.
It is time to say goodbye, my friends. Keep exploring and keep dreaming. Continue to unleash the extraordinary in the ordinary. Thank you for joining us on the OT Unleashed podcast, where we want to encourage you to engage, to cultivate, and to unleash. Love you guys. We'll talk to you later. See ya. Peace.